Hi everyone, my name is Fatima and welcome to today's TREA How To workshop series on local food. Our discussion today will focus on how to use a bread maker, a kitchen tool in which you can borrow from the London Library of Things hosted through Reimagine Co. Now we'll hear from Pamela Reid, who offers us a wealth of information given her extensive experiences in growing and processing of local food. Welcome, Pam.
Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to share some basic methods on how to use a bread machine in the kitchen. I have a Black & Decker bread maker. It's a great tool, and I'm going to share the most basic recipe, the white bread recipe. Quite a few recipes listed in the manual that I would encourage everyone to look at when you are using the bread machine in your own home. So my bread maker comes with a very detailed, many pages on guidelines, tips, recommendations, substitutions, and recipes. So today I would like to make the 3-pound white bread loaf. And it's very important when starting to add the ingredients in the order in which they're listed on the bread machine recipe. It's very important because you don't want the yeast to be mixing with the other ingredients first, so that the programmed steps will proceed as is designed. So first off, it's 2 cups of water, which is lukewarm, 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 tablespoons of butter, margarine, or any oil substitute. Again, you can learn more about different kinds of substitutions. 2 1/4 teaspoons of salt, 4 tablespoons of milk powder. And again, you can modify the milk for any other milk substitute. 1 tablespoon of sugar. And again, you can modify this with any other sweetener, except for artificial sweeteners. They won't work with the yeast. 5 1/2 cups of an all-purpose flour, 1/4 teaspoons of a bread machine yeast or a quick rise yeast. And then mix it all together and press start. But let's get started with the water. So we take the bread pan out of the bread machine, and inside are little tiny paddles. They're very small and they fit inside, and they're going to do all the work. That's one of the good things I think about a bread machine, is that it does save your shoulders from doing all the hard kneading. And this machine does have a timer, so you can set it for early morning and wake up in the morning and have a fresh loaf of bread prepared, or be doing something else and then have a fresh loaf. I think one of the popular benefits of having a bread maker is there's no preservatives in it, so it is a very fresh loaf. And I like to support my local flour mill, so I do get bread from either the Arva flour mill or Oak Manor. So I have a 10 kg bag of the Oak Manor organic unbleached flour, and it's wonderful. So we're going to add 2 cups of lukewarm water. If you're unsure, certainly use a thermometer to check the temperature of the water. I do prefer to use a glass see-through measuring cups so I can see exactly how much water I do have. And to be absolutely sure, always put your measuring cup down so you can get a nice level look. The ingredients and proportions are very important. With time and experience, one can experiment with changing, but I really do prefer to follow the recipes exactly. So, and now we need 4 tablespoons of butter. And again, your butter of choice. I do use an unsalted. So this is room temperature butter. It doesn't need to be melted. The warm water will melt it. So get a nice scoop. This is certainly an activity that could be done with children, and they would enjoy all of these steps of being able to fill the container. So 1, 2, And when I am dropping it into the pan, this is a non-stick pan. I do distribute the ingredients over. It's not just in one spot inside. The next is 2¼ teaspoons of salt. I do prefer a pink salt, so I've pre-measured 2¼ teaspoons, and I will sprinkle that inside. But again, your salt of choice. 4 tablespoons of powdered milk. So I pre-measured 4 tablespoons, and I'm going to sprinkle that on top. And then a tablespoon of sugar. So this is just a regular white sugar. I'm going to sprinkle that over, like so. And then 5½ cups of the flour. So I do prefer to use a metal, a wooden spoon or something to level off. So at this point, the recipe will recommend that you make a little well in the middle of the flour. If you're going to use the timer on the machine to start the bread maker at a later date, that will prevent the yeast from mixing prematurely with the water and the sugar and starting to activate the yeast. So by making a little tiny well with your finger in the top, you can then add, and I have a Fleischmann's quick rise yeast, and this is a 1¼ teaspoons of yeast. Now, because I'm not going to set the timer, I'm going to start this loaf right away. So at this point, everything is mixed. You'll pick your pan up, and every bread machine is a little different, but this one does click right in, and you'll hear it, it'll click in completely. So at this point, I will close the lid. So according to most bread makers, they do encourage, do not open the lid once you've closed it. Most of them have a little peekaboo window at the top so you can see what's happening inside. So we're good, closed. And at this point, I will plug the unit in. They do recommend not plugging bread maker in until you're ready to start mixing. Good, you get a little beep. And then each bread machine is going to be a little bit different. So there's usually some programming, and you'll be able to choose according to the loaf style. So this one has 13 different settings, and the bread setting for white is number 1. And so I will choose number 1, and then I will choose the weight. So this bread maker will do a 1½ pound, 2 pound, and a 3 pound loaf. So I am doing a 3 pound loaf. And then you can also choose the light, medium, or dark for the crust. So how dark you would like your bread to be. So I do like a light. So I will select light, and I will press play. So as it begins, the little paddles in the bottom will start to turn and incorporate all the ingredients. It's quite quiet, and the entire cycle from start to finish is about 3 hours. So it's something that you do need to plan for, and it's really enjoyable, and the entire house will start to warm up. So there are a couple of really good tips. The manual does go through some things that you can't skip and some things to be aware of. Troubleshooting, so if things don't work out exactly, there's ways to modify your recipe. And I think with each loaf that you make, your confidence grows and your willingness to experiment with different kinds of breads and ingredients. My next one I think I'm going to try is a cinnamon raisin and a multigrain loaf. But yeah, there's quite a few. On the front of this unit, there's different programmings for white, whole wheat, French, a sweet loaf, a low-carb, gluten-free, a quick bread, to make jam, which is an interesting feature, how to mix just a basic dough, a rapid white, and just a bake only. So if you were to do all the mixing yourself manually, you can still use the bread maker instead of the oven traditionally. So this has been the first loaf that I made this morning. So this is how the loaf came out. It's a 3-pound loaf. It's quite large. When you do take the loaf of bread out, the paddles are often baked right into the bottom of the loaf, and you can just easily pull those out. And then to remove the loaf as soon as it's done will ensure that you'll have a crispy loaf. If you leave the loaf inside the machine, it will soften, the moisture will soften the loaf, and that may not give you the result that you're looking for. And they do encourage to clean the machine right away, not to let it sit, to take the pan out, the paddles, to wipe out the interior. Right inside the machine is an exposed element, so not leaving any ingredients inside. And then properly storing it and unplugging it. They do include some safety. There's an entire page of things to be aware of. The machine is quite vigorous. The dough paddles will possibly, depending on the surface that you're working on, move the bread machine. So having it on a safe surface, certainly being aware of children and pets. But yeah, I think it's a fun project. Manual that comes with this particular bread maker is quite detailed, as I mentioned, and there's a bit of a quick start guide that urges everyone to use fresh ingredients. If anything is old or stale, you're not going to get as great a results. To measure accurately, there is no waste. This recipe is everything is measured, so there is no, and in fact there isn't even any packaging. So when the bread is made, I can then wrap it up in a tea towel and leave it on the counter, so I'm not having to head out to the grocery store and buy bread a loaf at a time. So there are some exact rules in here. When they talk about flour, I would encourage everyone who's a first-time bread maker to familiarize yourself with some of the language regarding all-purpose hard flours. And there's a difference between what is available in Canada and what's available in the US. So if you were to be buying an imported flour, that's something to be aware of. I do like Canadian flours more. And ingredients are very important, especially when it comes to the yeast and the sweeteners. Like I mentioned, the yeast won't activate with any kind of artificial sweetener. So going with a regular sugar, brown sugar, molasses, honey. But yeah, I would certainly encourage everyone to be very aware of some of the safety precautions. And the programming, I think, is a little bit intimidating initially, but once you familiarize yourself, it's quite easy to understand. There's a couple of things that are important that I think to remind yourself is that once the program has started, you can't interrupt it. And you shouldn't open the lid at all. So, and because I'm mindful of my energy usage, I do run the machine typically overnight. I am running it during the day today for the demonstration purposes, but I will set it to come on at about 4 o'clock in the morning. So then the process is done by 7 a.m. So I'm using the electricity during off-peak hours. And there's quite a few beautiful recipes in this guide. Like I said, there's ways of finding out more and going online. But this particular book, and it is in English and French, and I'm sure other languages would be available online, but this particular book has a white bread, a golden potato bread, a spelt, a regular white sandwich loaf, which I think would be great for French toast or any kind of grilled cheese sandwich, multi-seeded whole wheat bread, a seeded, so you're adding things like flax seeds, sesame seeds, all ground, so you could certainly add a hemp seed, chia, and an herbed garlic French bread, which is great. You could use all of these herbs fresh from a garden. That would take it up a level, certainly. And a cinnamon raisin pecan bread. And they do include a gluten-free fruit, nut, gluten-free. So anyone who is eating gluten-free, that there are several options. A classic date nut bread, and then how to make different kinds of jams. So you can add different ingredients because of the mixing inside, that you can add fruit and different things, and it does heat up and bubble. So it's a really interesting tool to, it doubles up in what it can do. It's not just a bread maker. And then a sweet dough, an oatmeal bread, different variations, pineapple cheese swirls. So, and it does include a troubleshooting if something goes wrong or the bread doesn't turn out, to improve on your next loaf. So, but hopefully that would not, it would be disappointing, I think, to finish the cycle and then take out a loaf of bread that wasn't quite what you were hoping for. So these are included in every bread maker, in every box, and the resources online and in the public library would be a valuable place to start. And yeah, I think it's a great activity to do when you're entertaining or with children. Certainly, if you're anyone who has any kind of shoulder issues or hands or anything, because bread making is a very vigorous activity. So if that's something that you can no longer do, then a bread maker is certainly a valuable tool for anyone who would still like to have fresh bread. So the best thing, I think, with a nice big loaf like this is a 3-pound loaf, is that it can be divided and frozen, so there is no waste. And I think I may actually turn this one into some grilled cheese sandwiches later. Before we go, I would encourage everyone to take advantage of the Lending Library here in London, or if you're in the surrounding area, to find out if there's a Lending Library making these appliances available. And if you do enjoy using the bread maker on a regular basis, the secondary appliance market is incredible. On places like Kijiji, Marketplace, people are selling these constantly, and you can get a very good quality secondhand unit, even in thrift stores. These are devices that are often purchased and then not appreciated and used as much as they possibly could be, and then are given away. So do encourage secondhand whenever possible. And if it's something that you really do see value in using on a regular basis, buying a good quality one, because we get what we pay for, that it is something that we're going to use continuously, a good return on our investment. So really can't put dollar value on a delicious loaf of bread. The joy in others when you take a fresh baked loaf of bread out of the machine and slice it and pop it in the toaster and put some delicious butter and jam on is priceless. I have lent this out to people in my family to borrow for a couple of loaves. So I do encourage people to borrow instead of buy, and certainly buy secondhand when possible. So that's part of my own commitment to having a smaller eco footprint. So thank you for joining me in my kitchen and our journey of making delicious home baked bread.